Really, really, really interesting USA Today poll to share with you. It's about this moment that, was, I think, really an eye-opener. The police crackdown to clear protesters from Lafayette Square last week looms as a defining moment in the national debate over race and law enforcement that followed the death of George Floyd. An exclusive USA Today Ipsos poll finds Americans overwhelmingly endorse the right of peaceful protest outside the White House, a view held by nearly 9 of 10 people across racial and partisan lines. Nearly 9 of 10 heard about the clashes that cleared demonstrators before President Donald Trump walked across the square to stand in front of historic St. John's Church holding aloft a Bible. In their wake, Americans, by a huge margin, by 22 percentage points, expressed more trust in the Black Lives Matter movement to promote justice and racial equality than they do in the President of the United States. Former President Barack Obama is more than twice as likely as Trump to be seen as a president who could best handle this moment of civil unrest. Now they continue and say, 63% oppose the show of force that swept the protesters from the park just north of the White House. The scene of many demonstrations in the past, almost half, 44%, say they strongly oppose it. So 63% are against what he did there, which means many Republicans as well are like, I'm against what he did there. And again, 9 of 10 people across racial and partisan lines, almost 90%, say people should be allowed to protest in front of the White House. Of course, this is a free country, and that's what we do. I mean, listen, this is one of those instances where we should talk more about the incident in and of itself and not the strategy behind it. But in terms of the strategy, this was a huge mistake, a dumb mistake, incredibly tone deaf. Guys, he lost Pat Robertson. How do you lose Pat Robertson as a Republican president? It's almost impossible to lose Pat Robertson. He lost Pat Robertson. Pat Robertson was like, I don't know about that, Mr. President. That's just not cool. That's what he said. He said, that's just not cool, Mr. President. Not cool. You lost Pat Robertson. The whole point of what he was doing here was, let me try to shore up my base of evangelical Christian fundamentalists who are reliable Republican voters. Let me shore them up leading into the election. And the core of that demographic, a guy like Pat Robertson, old white dude, evangelical Christian fundamentalist, he was like, man, this wasn't right. This didn't come across right. And then the other thing is, so he decided, I'm going to go all in on the law and order angle. I'm going to be the president of law and order. And what became immediately apparent was that what people really wanted to hear at that time from a leader was an understanding, sympathetic, nuanced, calming voice. So, of course, everybody understands as a president, you're not going to go out there and endorse looting and rioting. Duh. But if you give a speech about racial justice and the historic evils against black people in this country and the faults of policing and the fact that there needs to be reform and how what happened to George Floyd is unequivocally wrong and he should be tried and everybody else should be tried and we need a moment, an awakening and enlightenment moment on this issue because this is where the people are now. If you look at the polls, again, Black Lives Matter and racial justice shot up as an important issue to people. If you led on that issue like a president as opposed to taking a partisan stance of law and order, shut it all down, that's what people really wanted in this moment. They wanted the sympathetic, nuanced voice, and that's why even Obama, who's in many ways not, didn't do a good job as president, but people wanted that kind of a response. Because when you have national crises, like I've told you guys a million times before, people don't want a populist partisan bomb thrower. People want a calming, steady hand of leadership. A soothing voice to guide the country towards what is right and what is just and create a more perfect union, to sound a little corny about it here. But he did the opposite, man. He did the opposite. By 22 percentage points, there's more trust in Black Lives Matter than the president to promote justice and racial equality. Wow. Wow, that's something else. So I think, apart from the fact that I just substantively disagree with threatening to invoke the Insurrection Act, which I view as deeply unconstitutional and the death of the First Amendment if he follows through, apart from that, strategically, this was incredibly dumb. Which, by the way, that's why Trump and all of his cohorts, there were talks in D.C. about a week ago of, oh my God, what he really needs to do is give a speech on coming together now. So they realized the misstep pretty much immediately as they did it with tear gassing the peaceful protesters for the stupid photo op. They realized they needed to go in the other direction and have, more of a coming together moment. Let's have a leader who cares about bringing everybody in. And I don't know if they actually decided they're going to do that speech, but they were considering to do a speech where Trump would literally talk about racial justice. So I think they probably abandoned it because you can't, there's already too much, the contradiction is immense if you do the Law and Order and then no, I really meant this is a kumbaya moment. So he's a mess. He's a flailing mess right now. Really is a turning point, I think. The fact that 9 of 10 Americans are of course people should be able to peacefully protest outside of the White House. And Trump tear gassed those peaceful protesters. That means 10% of people were yeah, I'm cool with that. So he keeps shooting himself in the dick, man. That's what's happening. And Biden's at home eating ice cream and watching TV, and that's all he really has to do in order to stay with his massive lead.